Imagine a world where more women had the time to fully explore their genius. Welcome to She Rebel Radio, a community-driven podcast dedicated to supporting women to unlearn conventional rules and create businesses of significance. My name is Lulu. I host retreats and create spaces for entrepreneurial women to explore their genius, and today I'm going to create that same space for you, right here on this podcast episode. Are you an accidental or an intentional entrepreneur? Are these two things even mutually exclusive? And what are the pitfalls of each? Welcome back, ladies, to episode 96 of She Rebel Radio, Accidental versus Intentional. We are kicking off our summer series on She Rebel Radio, where week by week we're going to be building up to our 100th episode and our third birthday, which is taking place in September. Now, if you love the show, please don't forget to hit subscribe. Please leave us a review and be sure to share this episode or any other ones that you've loved with other incredible women. Now, I'm really looking forward to diving in today. I've been so busy with retreats. I've done 7 retreats over the past 12 months that, yes, She Rebel has taken a little back seat, but we are back sharing incredible content with you by way of 6 solo shows that I have got coming up. And these are really much harder to create than people anticipate, and I got a real aha moment when teaching my Pricing with Integrity workshop a few months ago as something that I've taught to some educational institutions and charities alike with this incredible content. And before I forget, I've got some amazing news to share with you about what's happening next with Pricing with Integrity, so stay tuned if you would like to become part of that with She Rebel Radio. But one of my clients on the workshop training for Pricing with Integrity was sharing an aha moment when I really noticed, and I'm always looking for themes and patterns, it's the way that my brain works, is that these two women on one of the online trainings for the Pricing with Integrity were sharing their takeaways, their aha moments, and their businesses came from a very different starting point. One of the women was very intentional about her business, her social enterprise, and was doing this alongside her day job. And she concluded that she was out of integrity with herself, with actually additional time that she was probably spending on the business and not really noticing, and what her needs may be within the business itself. And then the second woman shared in her takeaway that she was an accidental entrepreneur. She never actually intended to start a business. It was following a redundancy and a toxic work situation, which ended up in litigation, that she was actually out of integrity with her business. And I thought these two distinctions were really, really interesting in terms of the differences between the accidental entrepreneur and the intentional entrepreneur, that they found that they are out of integrity in their pricing within their business in different areas. As I've said, one of them within the business itself, that was the accidental entrepreneur, and one of them out of integrity with herself and the time that she was spending and what it is that she needed as the owner of the business. And this is really interesting. So let's dive into, firstly, what's the difference between an accidental... Welcome back, ladies, to episode 95 of She Rebel Radio. Can you even think of, whether you're thinking of yourself or those other entrepreneurs that you know, or maybe even famous entrepreneurs, or it may be that you're someone who's really, desperately grasping at some straws to try and start a business and it's not happening. You're really going to get some insights no matter where you are within your entrepreneurial journey. But let me ask you, can you think of any entrepreneurs that maybe inspire you? Do you know much about their story as to why their business got started? Because I'm going to share a few case studies of famous people with you to illustrate the point of the differences between the accidental and the intentional entrepreneur. And we are also going to explore, as I've said, whether these two things are even mutually exclusive. I really resonate with the accidental entrepreneur. In fact, I've always called my parents accidental entrepreneurs, which was exactly why I didn't want to start a business in the first place and got myself a professional career. And interestingly, I found out more and more recently as to why it was that they started their business. An opportunity arose for them, for my dad in particular at this point, to sell records. He was selling records for one of the big names and one of the big corporates, to actually sell records for himself. So he went to a record fair and made far more money in one day than he did. I can't remember if he said of either a week or a month at work. This was back in the 1980s. Alongside this, my mum was unable to go back to work following sterilisation after having me. And that's a whole different story, ladies, in terms of sterilisation. She was unable to go back to work. So their business became born out of a real necessity. Interestingly, I've also discovered recently they were the exact same age that I was when I started my business, age 32, 8 years ago. And again, really born out of necessity, a toxic work situation, being, really unable to work in the way that I was emotionally, burnout, etc. Whereas my mum had a very similar experience, but more she was physically unable to work because of the complications of her operation, which has really stayed with her. So it was very interesting from that point of view in terms of, family patterns and things that carry down, which I'm always interested in and work with my clients on, and having an even more depth realization myself. But what is some of the nuts and bolts here? And I am going to give you some examples of some famous people, don't worry, just not myself or my parents. But the accidental entrepreneur is someone who has never seen themselves running a business. They didn't see themselves running a business in a million years. It's just that circumstances, sometimes out of adversity, has led them there. That they have often had to create that business due to potential lack of other options and a real need for their own financial needs to serve themselves, to have a lifestyle change because, as we've heard, ill health, toxic work situations, redundancy, motherhood, all of those things that have led those people to starting their business. So for some reason, Anita Roddick really popped into my head, I should say. And my mum actually was the first manager of the Body Shop in Brighton back in 1976. So we've always had a strong link there. But I started doing some research on Anita Roddick and what a very strong intended business that was. But actually, in her biography, she said the Body Shop started out of a series of accidents. That one thing, it's almost like those synchronicities of the universe add up and, really created a success. But she started the business in order to support herself and her two children. I think there were two girls, whilst her husband was away in South Africa or South America. I can't remember. The detail doesn't really matter. But that's why she started the business. And then there was a series of accidents in terms of right place, right time. I understand the first shop, which I must check this with my mum, was placed between a funeral parlour or two funeral parlours, which got lots of controversy and the shop being talked about and all of those things. So what's really interesting is that, of course, Anita Roddick really created an intention around her business as to what it was that she was trying to create, but it started off as an accident. She even described it herself as a series of accidents, a series of successful accidents, but accidents all the same. And as we know, I think, at its height, the Body Shop, I don't know how many stores there are now, but there were just under 2,000 stores, like 77 million turnover. It was bought out by L'Oreal, which was, again, a very controversial decision given their history in testing on animals, etc. But looking at the starting point of where Anita Roddick started, she was a mum. She needed that autonomy and that freedom, and she needed an income. She needed to get her financial needs met at that time. And I believe when her husband came back, he joined the business. So there are some of the elements of the accidental entrepreneurs. And how about intentional entrepreneurs? Intentional entrepreneurs are those who have perhaps always wanted to start a business. They may be intentional about it and their purpose. And I think what's really significant about an intentional entrepreneur, is they've said they've always seen themselves doing that. Richard Branson is an example, but I want to give you a more female, feminine example. But also a lot of serial entrepreneurs, those who use one business to fund the next business, and the next business is something that's really powerful. But I feel a real element of an intentional entrepreneur, as well as seeing themselves as always doing it, is using some kind of platform to springboard themselves, to support that business, whether it's another business or it may be their status. So the example I'd love to give you here is Victoria Beckham. And again, I'm always looking at UK entrepreneurs and women entrepreneurs, because it's really important for us women to have those role models. And Victoria Beckham, as we know, started in the Spice Girls, and she was probably the least popular one actually, but she really used that as a platform, as well as her very famous marriage with David Beckham, to springboard her business. She used her presence, her fame, or her name being known as a springboard to launch her fashion business, to become a fashion designer. I believe she launched the first one. I think she still has two ranges, a cheaper one and a more expensive one. I think she started with the expensive one, and then she used that as a platform to create her cheaper range. She used her name to create her business as a fashion designer, which, again, researching Victoria Beckham, it turns out that she always wanted to be a fashion designer. That's what she always wanted to do. She always knew that was going to happen and that was going to lead her, and she used other ways to springboard herself into doing that, into her business. And she's had real sustainability. She's won numerous awards, and that, I might add, is not because she's Victoria Beckham. I know many other designers, not personally, unfortunately, although it's not my area. Many other, comments and things that have been made over the years about Victoria Beckham, that yes, she used her name initially as a starting point, but the designs, her expertise stand out on their own. She wouldn't be going, 15 years later, I believe it was 2008 that she started, had they not been any good. Her name would not have been enough. But what she knew was that she could use that as a springboard to really creating this business that she was very intentional about, and that she always wanted to do and knew that she would do. So thinking about that, are you a Anita Roddick or are you a Victoria Beckham? Are you accidental or intentional with your business? And do these things need to be mutually exclusive? And my answer to that is no, of course they don't need to be mutually exclusive. And that would be like saying that accidental entrepreneurs have no intentions or intention within their business. And that is simply not true. Those intentions really can come once we've started. I think there can be more fluidity in them changing, but there can be more of a risk of them being lost. But what's really interesting here is the starting point. The starting point is different of these businesses. And yeah, could it be better to have an intentional business because it's more intentional, there's more planning around it, it's not out of financial necessity. There can be more safety in the springboard that you may have, be it your name, another business, a career, etc., that you can use to propel yourself into that. So the starting point is really, really interesting. And I would love to hear from you, on social media, etc., when this episode's being shared, to tell me, are you Anita Roddick or a Victoria Beckham? Are you accidental or intentional? And even if you are not quite started yet, which one is really resonating with you? And as promised, we're going to explore the pitfalls of these two areas and go back, to my two ladies in this particular workshop who shared their aha moments that gave me the aha moment to create this podcast episode for you. Although I've had the title in my head, The Accidental Entrepreneur, for quite some time, but I thought it would be really interesting to look at the accidental versus the intentional. Not that I'm about more separation. We need more oneness in the world. We know that. But sometimes we have to separate things out, to explore them, to study them, to educate ourselves before we bring these things together. And the pitfalls, which seem really clear to me, when doing the pricing with integrity training and workshop is that the accidental entrepreneur, because it's often born out of financial necessity, is that they're very good at putting their needs first. i.e., a big purpose in starting the business is to make sure they create an income for themselves. And that comes firstly and foremostly. So they're very good at being in integrity with themselves with that, because that's why the business has been born. As I've said, does that mean the intention of what it is that they're doing doesn't come? It absolutely does. But their starting point is, I need to get paid. I need to pay my mortgage. I need to feed my children. I need to create an income here. And what happens is that integrity to yourself, that aspect of yourself within your business. But what can happen is if we stay stuck there in that just being in integrity to ourselves and are out of balance with being in integrity to our business, is that we don't look so much at the business model, the growth that is needed in seeing the business as a separate entity and serving the business from that space. So our growth can become stunted. Anita Roddick is obviously not an example of that, but she obviously added in that real intention and business growth model, but her starting point was accidental. And I think it's great that she acknowledged the number of synchronicities that existed around her. But accidental is really when you're forced into a business. And I definitely feel like that. I feel like I had no choice for so many reasons but to start a business. It was actually the opposite thing of what I wanted to do. That's why I created a professional legal career, because I saw the feast of famine that can come with an accidental entrepreneurial business. But the intentional entrepreneur is very good at being in integrity to the business, right? The intention has been to create a business. So the business needs come first. The growth model, what it is that needs to be created to create more income. These are also the people that are more likely to get investment within their businesses and less likely to bootstrap them like an accidental entrepreneur is likely to do. But they're very good at putting the business needs first, the business planning, etc. But what can happen is that they can be out of integrity with themselves, i.e. the business being an entity that needs to serve them and pay them and to also create time for them as well. So these might be some of the workaholics, etc. And in addition to which, again, Victoria Beckham is not a good example of this because of the income that her and her husband have created, is that, but if you're someone who is very intentional about your business, but you've got the day job that's supporting you, is that you will be less likely to let go of your security blanket potentially because you can't see how the business can pay you, because you're out of integrity to yourself, because you're all about the business. And we need to balance all of these things out, as well as being in integrity with our clients as well. That's the pricing with integrity model, which is a super, super powerful model, which I've taught over a couple of years. And I'm really excited to be sharing with you that we are going to be starting a peer group session with pricing with integrity. Well, in fact, there's going to be 2 peer group sessions. I'm looking for a very small group of women to join the first cohort, which is going to start in September. The date yet is not fixed, but what I have done is open the waiting list at lulumins.com/pricing if you want to dive deeper with this stuff in terms of being in integrity with yourself, with your business, and with your clients. We're going to have 2 peer group sessions with a small, intimate group of women, and you're going to get access to a 7-part self-study course to take you through the process of examining all of these areas, which is a real intuitive process. Many of my clients that have gone through this process want to do it again. They wanted to come to the workshops this year and haven't been able to. All of them. So we're going to do some peer group sessions, and I'd love you to join me, to join She Rebel Radio for this 7-part audio course and 2 peer group sessions with other incredible women where we're going to share, our thoughts and really amplify your self-worth in terms of where your integrity needs to sit within your business. And I know that so many of you, if not all of you, listening to She Rebel Radio are really women in business who really care about what it is that they're doing and want to be in integrity. And I was also throwing out and thinking about this, are there more women who are more accidental entrepreneurs? Because as we've heard, that motherhood aspect, the health implications that can come with motherhood, miscarriage, sterilisation, all of those things, needing to support kids, being a single mother, that do women sit more in the accidental entrepreneur camp? I did read an article, which I can't recall the name now, but accidental entrepreneurs also make up 1/3 of all entrepreneurs. I can't remember if that's worldwide, see me in the facts, worldwide or in the UK, but 1/3 of all entrepreneurs. So it's quite a high number. As we know, certainly in the UK, women make up around 20% of entrepreneurs in the UK. But it would be really interesting, and maybe we'll speak to NatWest about that, because we've been collaborating with them and have some cool stuff coming up as to this accidental versus intentional entrepreneurship and how that sits with women in particular. I think it's a really interesting conversation. At She Rebel Radio, we always love to further the conversation, to bring you new insights, to start a new thought process and ask the right questions. So it's been an honour to do that with you today, to create the space for you to connect with your genius. I'd love for you to deepen that work with me by joining the Pricing with Integrity peer group session. And the waiting list is open. So visit lulumins.com/pricing and get your name down and see if you are selected to join our first cohort, which is going to be happening in September. If you're listening to this after September, fear not, we will be running another one, most likely to start in November, with the second session in January. That's not yet confirmed, but visit the same page and all the details will be there. I appreciate you. Thank you so much for listening to She Rebel Radio, for continuing to support us. I'm really looking forward to us moving forward to our 100th episode, our 3rd birthday. We're about to hit 12,000 downloads. I'm super grateful and blessed to do the work that I do and to have you listening. Have an amazing day. You've been listening to She Rebel Radio. It's been an honour to support you taking the time to discover more of your genius. If you'd like to attend a retreat or work with me, please do visit lulumins.com and feel free to further the conversation with me and other incredible women on the usual social media platforms.